And what's going on, Devils fans? It is, as always, your host, your best friend, your confidant, your number one source, Neil Villapiano, and welcome to an off-season outlook edition of the Devil's State of Mind podcast right here on the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as SportsWire Radio. And without a doubt, the best place to get everything you need to know about your New Jersey Devils and what I think is fair to say, a very new-looking Devils team by the time we get to training camp. I don't think there's any debate about that from anybody. But nonetheless, as always, guys, I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you're checking out this podcast episode. Thank you, as always, for taking time out of your day to check this episode out. I greatly appreciate it a ton. Shout out quickly to both of our sponsors down below. Of course, we got DraftKings Sportsbook. And look, hockey fans out there checking out this podcast episode. Look, we are now into the conference finals of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we're down to the final four, and you know these games are going to get that much tighter, going to be a lot more drama, and also more chances to bet on all of these games. NBA playoffs as well into the conference finals. Major League Baseball now into the middle of its second month of the season, and there's so much more on top of that. And you already know that DraftKings Sportsbook is your number one destination to get in on a whole huge cash prizes. And if you sign up with DraftKings using our promo code THPN, you bet $5, you get $200 instantly in risk-free bets. I'm not kidding you. Just $5 on your first bet, and you get $200 instantly in risk-free bet money. It is the absolutely awesome deal that you guys definitely need to jump on. So again, sign up with DraftKings, use our promo code THPN, and if you bet just $5, you get $200 in risk-free bets. And as always, shout out to our friends over at Tom's River Brewing, the home stick toss, and also Raise Hell Lager, and the official beer sponsor of the Devil's State of Mind podcast. If you guys haven't already, I highly recommend you guys go get yourself a can or a bunch of cans of Stick Toss or Raise Hell. It is the perfect beer for the Devils fans in your life, or if you're a Devils fan as well, make sure you guys go get it. It is absolutely awesome. And as always, shout out to Tom's River Brewing, and shout out to both of our sponsors down below. So here's how this episode is going to work, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, we're going to quickly recap the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs and get you guys ready for the conference finals. Then we're going to give you an up-to-date Devils World Championships update. We'll kind of talk to you guys about the players from your New Jersey Devils that are currently overseas playing for their respective countries. Then we're going to dive into a little bit of news and a little bit of rumors as well, give my thoughts on that. And then finally, we are going to look at the off-season outlook for this Devils team. I know it's probably been talked about numerous times, but want to give my fair breakdown of what I feel needs to happen for this Devils team in order to get themselves ready for 25-26. So as always, Devils fans, we have a bunch to get to here on the Devil's State of Mind podcast. So let's not waste any more time and get rolling. We will get rolling and drop the puck with, again, our first topic of the day, and we're going to quickly recap all of the second round matchups of the Stanley Cup playoffs. First, starting with the team that knocked the Devils out of the first round of these playoffs, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes, who vanquished the Washington Capitals in 5 games. And I have to be honest with you, I don't think there is much of a debate in saying that I think the Devils played better against the Hurricanes in the first round than the Capitals did in the second round against this Carolina team. Yeah, they both ended up in 5, but at the same time, the Devils actually ended up outscoring 5-on-5 against Carolina 10-9, while the Canes outscored 5-on-5 against Washington. I think it was something like 14-8 or 14-9. Carolina definitely was the better team 5-on-5. They continue to show their dominance at home, and now they move on to the Eastern Conference Finals for the second time in the last 3 years, and their opponent is going to be a team that they saw just 2 years ago in the Eastern Conference Finals. We'll get to that, who their matchup is, in just a moment here. But going over to the Western Conference here, we're going to start with the Edmonton Oilers knocking out the Vegas Golden Knights in 5 games. I actually had the Golden Knights winning in 5 games. So I was completely wrong about that. I thought the goaltending for Vegas was going to be just a bit better than the goaltending for Edmonton. But Stuart Skinner, give him credit. Shutouts in the last 2 games of that series, did a fantastic job, and now has helped the defending Western Conference champions make it back to the Western Conference Finals for the second year in a row. They are 4 wins away from reaching their second consecutive Stanley Cup Finals. And their opponents in this Western Conference will be, not that surprising, the Dallas Stars, who vanquished the Winnipeg Jets in 6 games, including winning Game 6 in overtime, thanks to Thomas Harley, who continues to have a tremendous year for Dallas. And really quickly, I just wanted to send my condolences, my thoughts, my prayers to Mark Scheifele and the entire Scheifele family. Right before really the morning of Game 6 2 nights ago, we found out that Mark Scheifele's father passed away the night before in his sleep. And it was uncertain if Mark Scheifele was going to play this Game 6. But apparently when the Winnipeg Brass went back to the hotel room to ask Scheifele, Scheifele did not hesitate and said, "I'm going to play." And he stepped up as he scored the first goal of the game, gave the Jets the lead. It was as Hollywood could get. You know what I mean? It was just absolutely perfect. And the Stars would end up tying it, and this game would go to overtime. But unfortunately, right before overtime, of all people, Mark Scheifele took a penalty, and the Stars had a power play that lasted a little bit at the end of the third period and started mostly in the overtime. And the Stars were able to capitalize on that and eliminate the Winnipeg Jets in 6. So you have to really feel for Mark Scheifele to go from the lowest of lows to a huge high to another very, very low moment. So a really tough way for Mark Scheifele in particular to have his season come to an end. And again, our thoughts and prayers here with the Devils fan base and basically with all of the hockey world is with Mark Scheifele and his family during this time. But yeah, the Dallas Stars make it back to the Western Conference Finals for the second time in a row. And once again, they'll be taking on the Edmonton Oilers. And last but certainly not least, I wanted to save the best for last. I say that just because of, we all know what happened less than 24 hours ago as the Florida Panthers blew out, it dominated the Toronto Maple Leafs 6-1 in Game 7 to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals for the 3rd year in a row. And for the second time in 3 years, we'll face the Carolina Hurricanes in that Eastern Conference Finals. As for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I mean, there's already been so much said, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you get blown out in games 5 and 7 by a combined score of 12-2. You at least respond in game 6 with a 2-0 win to force game 7, but then you kick your fans below the belt to be clean here by losing game 7 on home ice. And once again, the Maple Leaf season comes to a very disappointing end. And I firmly believe that changes are coming for that organization, and it'll be fascinating to see how everything goes out there. And not to be one, but I'm going to be one a little bit in that I think this kind of takes some of that knock on Sheldon Keefe off after what we saw last night, because while I do believe that Sheldon Keefe deserves a part of the blame for obviously the lack of, championship success in his time in Toronto, I don't firmly believe that he should have been the scapegoat and the reason that they haven't gotten it done. It's that core, it's that mix of players that just doesn't work. And you saw that last night. We've been seeing it for years now. So for Devils fans who obviously was dealing with a lot of Leafs fans, especially in the 3 losses that the Devils suffered against Toronto this year, definitely got a lot of, you have Sheldon Keefe. It really was Sheldon Keefe that was the problem. Devils fans can now, look back and smile a little bit and know that, you know what? The Leafs just proved all of us right. and not themselves right. And so, now the Devils have Sheldon Keefe after, his first year, and now we'll see what he can do to kind of, redeem himself, not just from this year, but obviously from what happened in his time in Toronto. But I'm sure Sheldon Keefe, just a little bit, just a tiny bit, tiny, minuscule bit, was smiling after the Leafs once again did not come through in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So with that all in mind, that is what we have. So we have the Florida Panthers against the Carolina Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Finals, and over in the Western Conference Finals, you have the Edmonton Oilers against the Dallas Stars. My really quick prediction, because I believe game one between Florida and Carolina will be tomorrow night. I have the Carolina Hurricanes beating the Panthers in 7 games. And I know, Devils fans, none of us want to hear that. None of us want that to happen, considering that that's one of our rivals and team that we faced in the playoffs and we faced numerous times. But I think that home ice advantage is going to play so big for Carolina. They've continued to not lose at home. But I will say, if there's any team that could beat this Carolina team, it's the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. I expect this series to go back and forth, but I think the home ice advantage is going to end up being the deciding factor in this one. But hey, I've been proven wrong many a times. And then over in the Western Conference Finals, I have the Dallas Stars in 6 games. I think the Oilers will certainly put up a really good effort. They will be ultra competitive, but I think the goaltending is going to end up being the difference maker. Jake Oettinger had a really strong second round going up against Connor Hellebuck and, really, really playing very, very well. And I think that despite Stuart Skinner playing well of late, it's just hard for me to see them, Stuart Skinner continuing this production. But again, I could be wrong, but I think the Stars, who are a lot better than what they were last year, I think are out for revenge. I think they're absolutely ready to do this, and I think they will. I think they will overwhelm the Edmonton Oilers, and overall, I have the Stars winning in 6. So I am looking to seeing Carolina against Dallas in the Stanley Cup Finals, and we'll see. We'll see what happens once we get to that point. So now, with that out of the way, let's talk about our beloved Devils, shall we? That's what you're all here for, right? And let's start with talking about the World Championships update. And you guys follow my personal Twitter at the NVP Show. I've been doing a really good job, if I do say so myself, not to toot my own horn, but I've been keeping you guys updated as best as I can with how things have gone for our Devils players that are representing their countries in the World Championships. We'll start with the trio for Switzerland. First and foremost, Nico Hischier suffered an injury last week, and it was deemed to be a lower body injury, not severe and not bad in any way, but for precaution to make sure that nothing untoward happens and that he's not out for a long period of time later on. Nico Hischier's World Championships is done, so he will not play the rest of the way. So they will be without their captain. And we're just fortunate here in New Jersey that Hischier's going to be okay, and he'll be more than ready to go once training camp starts next season. As for Timo Meier, had himself one hell of a day just yesterday on Sunday afternoon against Hungary. Switzerland came away with a dominant 10-0 win. I understand the picture's not in the game against Hungary, but just wanted to find a good picture of Timo for Switzerland in this World Championships. But Timo Meier having a very strong tournament, I might add. 2 goals, 7 points overall, including a 4-point night in that game against Hungary just yesterday. Had 2 goals and 2 assists to help Switzerland with that win. Jonas Siegenthaler got that game off yesterday, so he did not play, but he's also had a pretty strong tournament on the back end, has a goal, and also 3 points to his name. So the boys from Switzerland are certainly doing a lot of good damage here in this World Championships. Now let's shift over to one of the host countries, and that is Sweden. And of course, between the pipes for Sweden is Jacob Markstrom, who is having a phenomenal tournament. And right now, you could make an argument that he's probably the best goaltender in this tournament. He is 3-0-0, a perfect 3-0-0, with a 0.33 goals against average and an astounding .977 save percentage, including 2 shutouts. That is phenomenal. He has given up just, I believe, 1 goal in the 3 games that he has played. And I get it that he's played some not so dominant countries, including in his last game, he only had to make 9 saves. But nonetheless, he is still doing very, very well, pretty much picking up where he left off in the Stanley Cup playoffs, doing very, very well for Sweden and giving them a really strong chance of winning this year's World Championships. And, it's just great to see when your guys, obviously you want to see them in the playoffs representing the Devils. I get that, guys. I totally get that. I'm not naive to it. But I enjoy cheering them on even when they're playing in international competition. We all did that watching Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt and even Eric Holla during the Four Nations face-off a few months ago. And I'm doing the same thing here. And just seeing Jacob Marshall playing really, really well is awesome to see. And last but not least, one of the Devils' top prospects who they just signed to an entry-level contract not too long ago, Lenny Haminaho, playing for Finland. Finland ended up coming back and upsetting Canada earlier today, 2-1 in a shootout. Lenny Haminaho did not have a point in that game, but he has 1 goal and 4 points in this tournament. So he's actually making some pretty decent contributions. And he's a kid that a lot of us here are really excited to see, whether it's him maybe making the roster at a training camp or certainly playing down with the Utica Comets this upcoming season. Either way, he will be playing professional hockey in North America this year. And he's certainly exciting us because, look, we've talked about Arseny Griciuk numerous times here on the podcast, right? We know how much excitement's around him. But I think, honestly, you could say that Lenny Haminaho is without question the second best offensive prospect we have. And he's done a lot of really, really good things as well. And so I'm very excited and very curious to see what he can bring to this organization moving forward. He signed a 3-year entry-level contract, so he'll be around for a little while. And again, if you don't remember, Arseny Griciuk, considering his age, he only was allowed to sign a 1-year entry-level deal. We know that Griciuk will be on the team. Be interesting to see if Lenny Haminaho has a similar path like Dawson Mercer, where we didn't expect him to make the training camp in his first, make the roster out of training camp in his first year, but he ended up doing it nonetheless. So I'm really, really curious to see how he performs playing in North America in a couple of months. And that's your overall World Championships update. We're only a couple of days away, actually, from the round robin. Well, not the round robin, the elimination rounds of this tournament. And it looks like all of our Devils players, minus obviously Nico Hischier, will all be playing in the elimination rounds because they've all helped contributed and been really, really good for their teams and helped them be some of the top countries in this tournament this year. So a lot more of our Devils guys to watch for here in this World Championships moving forward. So now we'll shift over to a little bit of news, a little bit of rumors. Rumors-ish, I guess, is the best way to look at it. The first news came actually just last week when the Devils announced a couple of coaching changes. They let go of assistant coaches Ryan McGill and Chris Taylor. Additionally, the contracts of head video coach Jerry Deneen and Utica Comets assistant coach David Cuniff also were not renewed. So the Devils will, from the Devils' perspective, they will be looking for 2 new assistant coaches alongside Sheldon Keefe, as Jeremy Colleton is the only one that remains from last year's team. Now, Chris Taylor doesn't surprise me. I mean, I don't know how much of a contribution he really made to the coaching staff, both with Lindy Ruff and in the 1 year with Sheldon Keefe. Ryan McGill, a little bit of a surprise considering the Devils are one of the better defensive teams in the league. But what it tells me is that basically the Devils, or not the Devils, but Sheldon Keefe wants his own guys. So it'll be really interesting to see how quickly this process goes along. Again, it's been about a week now, so we haven't heard anything up until this point. So I'm sure they're going to let this process go the way they're probably going to take their time with it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sheldon Keefe hires some guys that have ties to him. Because look, a lot of times the head coach, they want their own guys. They want the guys that they work with the best. I think what happened this year is that I believe Tom Fitzgerald wanted to see if Sheldon Keefe could work with the coaches that were already here, because Lindy Rupp was the only one let go from last year. And, everyone else stayed around. I know that Travis Green, obviously, he was the interim coach, and then he left to go be the head coach of the Ottawa Senators. But other than that, they kept pretty much everybody, which was a little bit of a surprise last year. This year, again, kind of makes sense. A little disappointed to see Ryan McGill go, because I thought he did well. But again, Sheldon Keefe wants his guys, and be curious to see. So that, again, just proves this team is going to be different one way or the other. That's the way you got to look at it. So it'll be different on the ice, and it'll also be different behind the bench. And again, Utica will also be looking for a couple of guys as well. So that's pretty much like the main news that we have up until this point. And now I want to shift over. I'm going to be pretty quick with this, because I know it's been talked about ad nauseum, and I don't really want to talk about it too much, because there's not much to really talk about that hasn't already been said. And also, it's not a guarantee that's going to happen this year. But I want to talk a little bit about Quinn Hughes potentially to the Devils. But what I want to bring up is not a rumor. It's more of something that Larry Brooks of the New York Post, he gave a trade idea for the Devils to potentially use to try to acquire Quinn Hughes from Vancouver. It includes a package of either Shimon Nemec or Seamus Casey, a first-round pick, and forward Dawson Mercer to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for defenseman Quinn Hughes. Now, again, in case you don't know, Quinn Hughes still has 2 years left on his current contract. He will be an unrestricted free agent in 2027. We all know the comments that the Canucks general manager Jim Rutherford made. We also know the comments that Tom Fitzgerald did not make in his end of the season presser last week, which good on him for not saying anything. So yeah, there's a lot of speculation about, what's going on with Quinn Hughes and what'll happen. Adam Foote, one of the assistant coaches for the Canucks, was actually just hired as their new head coach. That's Nolan Foote's father, Devils prospect, Nolan Foote, or Devils forward. I don't want to say prospect, not a prospect anymore, but Devils forward Nolan Foote. And Quinn Hughes has said before that he's one of the best assistant coaches he's ever worked with, best defensive coach he's ever worked with. So clearly the Canucks are going to do everything they can to keep Quinn Hughes around long term. I think if there's even the possibility that Quinn Hughes does become available truly, I believe that the Devils will look into it. At this moment, I don't see them entertaining it unless it's brought to them. But obviously things could change. Things could certainly change. Can't do anything right now, but we'll see. But for me, I think the Devils should stay the route of being patient. Let the Canucks, quote unquote, make the mistake if they really want Quinn Hughes, and not try to, force it if it's not really going to be there and then end up overpaying. That's the way I look at it. Also, our defensive core is locked up at this point at the moment. So it's harder to see the Devils doing this, but again, I've seen crazier things happen. So guys could get moved that we're not talking about. Dougie Hamilton is obviously a name that people have talked about being traded. So we'll see. We shall see. But I just wanted to bring that up because I saw it kind of interesting. But again, we'll see what happens with the whole Quinn Hughes phenomenon during this offseason and moving forward until there's more concrete to what's going on. So now we come to the last segment here of this episode. We're going to do a quick off-season outlook. I'm going to be using my good friends at Puckpedia to kind of show you guys what the roster looks like at this moment, then kind of give you an idea of what I think should happen. Just also be aware, please ignore the lines and how they look. It's just how it is set up when I first brought up Puckpedia. So don't take any of this seriously. Also, don't take the contract that I gave Luke Hughes too seriously, although I think it's actually pretty reasonable when I look at it. But nonetheless, let's actually get into this a little bit. So actually, before I bring up that that graphic. Let me just give you guys a quick understanding of what needs to get done. So for the Devils checklist, the number one priority without question is to re-sign Luke Hughes. There's no doubt about that, right? We know that he is an RFA. We know that he needs to get re-signed. I made a post about this a little while ago that I keep retweeting because I want people to understand this. Because Luke Hughes is a 10.2 player, according to the NHL rule books, and he has not played enough games for 3 years in the NHL, although he's gone through his entry-level contract. He cannot be offer sheeted. So we don't have to worry about that. The only thing we have to look is, when is he going to get signed? So we don't have to worry about him getting offer sheeted anytime soon. Do not worry about that. I'm telling you guys, it is fine. We are fine. So don't worry about it. The second thing is, what is the contract going to be? My guess from a lot of the projections that I've seen is I think that he's going to sign somewhere around an 8-year deal at just over $8 million. Now, the Devils will have about $13 million in cap space going into this. So they have plenty of money to give Luke Hughes what he wants. And the Devils are certainly going to try to make this fair. It's also possible that they could sign him to a shorter-term deal, but I think also it's more likely they'll sign him long-term, and that's another main player that they don't have to worry about, right? But if you look at this, you sign Quinn Hughes, you already have Brett Pesce locked up, Siegenthaler's there, Hamilton, Brendan Dillon, Nemec, Kovacevic obviously as well. So the Devils are pretty much set on the back end, even before trade, if you trade him or not, Seamus Casey is still available and all that stuff. Now let's go over to the forwards, because that's more of the big thing in terms of new players and changing how it looks, right? So before you look at the lines and everything, again, don't take this too seriously. Here's what the Devils have in terms of forwards going into next year that are signed. You have Bratt, Hischier, Timo Meier. You have Eric Hall in the last year of his deal, Jack Hughes, Arseny Gutsyuk on that 1-year entry-level contract. You have Paul Cotter in the last year of his deal before he's an RFA. Just thought I mentioned that. Dawson Mercer on the 2nd year of his 3-year deal. Stephen Nason, 2nd year of his 3-year deal. And then you have Andre Palat in the 2nd to last year of his current contract with the Devils. So right away, the Devils right away already have 2 spots that they need to fill. However, there is money going to be moved this offseason. And I think it's going to start with Andre Palat. I believe that he will most likely be bought out. I don't see a world where the Devils can trade him in a salary dump unless they find a team that's okay with that. Somebody mentioned to me the Anaheim Ducks as an option. Perhaps. Who knows? But I think the more likely route is that they will end up buying him out. And that will open up some salary cap space, and it'll open up another spot on the roster. Same thing, looking at Eric Hall. He's on the last year of his 3-year deal, as mentioned before, just over $3 million. Again, he could also be bought out. I think he's more likely to get traded. That's the way I look at it, in a different deal. Maybe they acquire someone that fills into one of those roles, maybe not. But nonetheless, that would open up another spot. So the way that I look at it is this. You have to retool the majority of the bottom 6. We're talking about 3 or 4 new guys. You also could, because he is an RFA, and most likely I think he will be back, you're going to have Cody Glass as well in the bottom 6. So again, you're still looking at 3, more or less 3, maybe 4 new players on that bottom 6 to really, really, make this depth a lot better and have the depth scoring that we were begging for last offseason. So that's what you have to do. But the other thing you have to look at is you need a top 6 finisher. Or a scorer, as I like, or if you want to make it simple. You need to find a guy who has a nose for the goal that can really, really do well on a wing side of either playing with Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier. And it could be Arseny Gutsyuk is that guy. But also, I still think you need to go out and look for options. That could be in free agency. That could be in a trade. Could be maybe somebody in our system that all of a sudden comes out and makes that type of contribution. However you want to do it needs to be done. So that's how I look at this offseason. The outlook is the Devils need to focus on retooling that bottom 6 and finding a top 6 scorer and obviously re-signing Luke Hughes. I would say in the order of what's going to happen, I think Luke Hughes is the first domino to fall, and then they'll go into the rest of the offseason. I think that's the way they're going to do it. I think they're going to try to get it done before July 1st so that they have that contract done. They know where their cap situation is going into July 1st with the free agency market and everything, and then go from there. That's the way that I see it going. And the Devils have to do better. And look, Tom Fitzgerald said it. He said it, that this team's going to be different next year, and we need to fix this team because this year wasn't good enough. So he's holding himself accountable, and now it's about, can he back up what he said? A lot of eyes are going to be on him. In my opinion, his seat is hot, and I'm giving him this year to prove himself. Because if not, he has to go. There's no other way to put it, because this team needs to take that next step to being a cup contender with the core that we have. They have to. If not, they end up being like the Toronto Maple Leafs, only our biggest flaw is injuries and not just guys not stepping up in the playoffs, which also sucks. Either way, it sucks. And I don't want to be that. I know we have the Leafs former head coach, but I still don't want to be that. Nonetheless, that's my offseason outlook. That's what I think your expectations should be. They may not spend a ton of money other than, re-signing Luke Hughes, but you never know. Tom Fitzgerald can make a big move that shocks everybody, and, I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see. But that's the offseason outlook, and that's going to do it for this episode of the Devil's State of Mind podcast. As always, guys, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to check this episode out. I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. As always, make sure to follow us on Facebook and also on Instagram at Devil's State of Mind, and also give us a follow over on Twitter. We're very close to 3,000 followers on Twitter, so please make sure to go follow if you haven't already. And also, if you're here on YouTube, make sure to leave a like and subscribe as well, and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time a new episode comes out on YouTube as well. But again, thank you so very much, and we will see you in the next episode. Everyone continue to be the awesome people that you are. And as I always say at the end of every episode, let's go Devils.